show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 4:15 p.m. And of course, today is the 15th of June 2025. Happy Father's Day to the wonderful, great, brave, awesome, amazing, strong dad out there. You guys are the best. I am a father as well. I got a 5-year-old daughter, and it is awesome to be a father. I think it's the greatest role any man can ask for, even if we don't say it often. But being a father is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. It is the most fulfilling work you would ever do because it's forever until, probably God calls you over. But being a father is the greatest, the greatest by far job that I've had to have. And I'm grateful to God for giving me my daughter and for giving me the strength to be able to be who I am to my daughter. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful. So happy Father's Day to each and every father out there. God bless you. Stay strong. Take care of your kids. Spend time with your kids. Advise your children. Take them out. Okay. Start young. Okay. Do not just give your entire time, your youth. Do not give it to a 9 to 5 job. I'm not saying working isn't what you should be doing because you have to provide for your family, but don't give your best years to a job. Okay. Do not give your best years to a job. Make sure you give those youthful energy to your daughters and to your sons. Okay. Because they need it. Okay. They need it in this world. Fathers have to do their duties. We have to definitely do our duties. With that being said, God bless fathers in America. God bless you and around the world. God bless the fathers. All right, back to business. What is going on here on American soil? Of course, we know no king's protests doing way too much, but I get it. Free speech. You have the right to protest. Shout out to Jet. Shout out to your 2-year-old daughter. Jet, God bless you. God bless you for tuning in. God bless you. Happy Father's Day, Jet. Happy Father's Day to everybody in the chat. All right, here we go. Gavin Nuomo.
About all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
That was California Governor Gavin Newsom Tuesday in a prime-time address condemning the administration's response to the protests in Los Angeles and warning that democracy is under attack, a familiar refrain from the anti-Trump resistance going back to the president's first term. We are back with our panel. Alicia, why did Governor Newsom come out so strongly against Trump's actions in Los Angeles?
Well, I think he felt like he had to in order to galvanize his base. You have Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is making these same arguments, getting a lot of media attention, saying Trump is a dictator, he's authoritarian. And so I think this was an effort by Gavin Newsom to draw the spotlight back to him. And he had also been attacked by his progressive base for making some concessions to Trump and the right on the culture wars. So I think he was trying to shore up that support.
But on the other hand, he now put himself firmly on the left. And if there's some riots and things that continue, if there's violence that continues, doesn't he lose politically from that?
Well, I think this is a liability for a general election in 2028. But I think his first goal is just to get through the primary in 2028 and beat Pritzker, who has a lot more money, by the way.
Yeah, well, so do you think this was about 2028 then?
I have no doubt.
Okay. All right. So, Kyle, one of the things that puzzles me is the Democrats can't get past their standing in sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. Okay. It was a clear loser in the presidential election. You'd think they'd step back from that. And instead of saying you can't assist ICE in any way. Just say, okay, let them go ahead and do their deportations, particularly since if you bar them, ICE, from going in courthouses, going in jails, that means ICE has to go in the streets and or go into homes, and that's more dangerous, more disruptive.
Right. I think that's absolutely true as a matter of policy. The challenge politically is that some of these cities, Chicago, Los Angeles, are so far tilted to the left that that is not a tenable political argument in them. And that is also the problem for a guy like Gavin Newsom, because California is a state that itself, even though it's bigger than one city, is pretty far to the left. And so that is the challenge for him is, if you ran in a general election and for president saying, I'm a blue governor, but I'm against sanctuary cities, I think that would be a very popular message. But that is a hard message to try to take to a Democratic primary or even just to a voter base of a state like California.
Kim, the weekend protests you wrote about this week, there's something like 1,800 of them planned across the country. But you're not impressed with what you think the political result will be for Democrats in the anti-Trump resistance. Explain that.
Well, Paul, we've been doing this for 10 years now. I went back and looked at the many protests that were held in the first months of the first Trump administration, from the women's marches on all the way through a day without immigrants, a tax march, a May Day protest. None of this convinced the Trump administration to change any of its policies. But what it has done is produce this professionalized protest rioting movement that now sucks up all the headlines when you go out. Look, Democrats might have an argument to be made about deportation policy. Nobody is hearing it. And while there will probably be protesters that go out this weekend that are being peaceful, the headlines will all be about those that are not, and those are mobilizing too. And there's going to be more frozen water bottles thrown at officials and riots in the streets and interactions with cops, and that will be the headline. I don't see how that helps Democrats at all.
Kim, let me ask you about this episode with Alex Padilla, the senator, Democratic senator from California, who was forcibly removed after trying to approach the DHS secretary, Kristi Noem, at a press conference she was having. He was handled pretty roughly, but who was at fault here?
Look, I don't see there's any way to see this other than a stunt, and that all the benefit of the doubt has to go to the security and Secret Service officers here. Apparently, he was also in the building in another conference room and asked to go and stand at the back. The people who were escorting him took them there. There's no indication, though, that that was announced or made clear to the security detail. And he wasn't in a suit. He wasn't wearing a security pin. And all of a sudden, they saw this quite large man striding toward the podium, toward the person they're meant to protect. I'm not quite sure what else they were meant to do in that situation. And he was clearly trying to get some attention, and he's obviously managed to do that. But the fault would seem to be his.
Alicia, all of this seems to, and we briefly don't have a lot of time, but it seems this is just going to polarize the immigration debate even more. We're kind of fated here for the next few years to be this divided on immigration.
I think that's right. I don't think you're going to get any kind of compromise in Congress on legislation. Now, there was a hope that maybe if you get the Supreme Court ruling that could, and this may still happen, overturn the DACA program for kids who were brought here illegally as kids, then there may be some kind of negotiations. But I think that this has really poisoned the debate further, as you say.
Hey, it's Will Kane.
Whoa. All right. We are definitely not on the same page when it comes to immigration, but this is what the commander-in-chief voted for and also campaigned on, and this is what Americans voted for. Anyway, Minnesota.
Joining us now is South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Congresswoman, it's my understanding that all members of Congress are being invited to participate in a video briefing within the next hour or so on preventing and avoiding this kind of violence.
Right. This is deeply disturbing as someone who's been on the receiving end of political violence. Donald Trump is no stranger to it either, but members of both parties deal with these kinds of threats on a daily basis sometimes. And it's very scary. And I think many of us, whether you're on a school board or on city council or in Congress, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it's going to make all of us rethink and re-strategize how we keep ourselves and our families safe. And the next thing I want to say is that I want to ask America to pray for Minnesota. I am praying for Representative Melissa Horton and her husband and their family, and State Senator John Hoffman and his wife and their family. Deeply troubling, traumatizing, just terrible for the country right now, as divided as we are. We don't condone any political violence of any kind at any time, anywhere.
Yeah, it's difficult enough to go into your line of work to be the victim of verbal brickbats or emails or whatever. But you don't go into political service thinking that you're going to hear a knock at the door and get gunned down by somebody who apparently disagrees with you.
Right. And look, I mean, Donald Trump took a bullet for his country. Nancy Pelosi's husband got hit on the head with a hammer. I mean, Steve Scalise was shot 5 times at a softball game. And so this is the kind of thing that the rhetoric leads up to this. I've been warning about this for a long time. I get threats on a daily basis. It's scary for me and my children. We've had to beef up our security, and to see this was a person in a law enforcement vehicle, or what appeared to be. He was in a law enforcement uniform, went right up to the front door and shot and killed 2 people today, and had a whole list, it sounds like, according to your reporting, of others that he was going to shoot and try to kill. And so it's deeply troubling and disturbing, and it's scary. Many of us, whether you're on the school board or in Congress, we're not going to sleep tonight because we're going to be making sure, thinking about, praying about how do we stay safer. But also, it's a scary time for our country. We saw riots. LA was burning down last weekend. We need both parties, whether it's our party or not, or the other side, to condemn political violence of all kinds. When people are jumping on cars, burning in LA, that would have been a good time to condone, to put away that kind of violence and say, this is not okay. Political violence is never okay. It can get somebody killed. And it's a very scary time for our country and for elected officials everywhere.
So how do we get to that place where, people in your line of work, Republicans and Democrats, can disagree without generating the kind of hatred that seems to be involved in a crime like this?
Well, number one, I think that we as elected officials have to acknowledge where there's a problem. This is a problem, and how do we work together for a solution? It doesn't mean going online and saying you're going to bully the other side. That doesn't help the situation, because somebody will see those comments, that kind of rhetoric, and then go and execute it. I had someone a couple weeks ago pick up a potted plant and almost tried to throw it at me on stage at an event that I was speaking at. I've had so many death threats, and so many of us have. And so the rhetoric is a problem. And we also have to work together, both sides of the aisle, to tamp down on that kind of thing and say, if it's someone on our side, we need to put it away and put it down, and make sure that people know that this is not okay. Even if it's a member of our own party, we need to acknowledge this is a problem and say no more.
Yeah, well,
we have to be the adult in the room.
As you point out, Steve Scalise, the House whip, was shot at the baseball practice a number of years ago. Thankfully, he recovered. And of course, President Trump was shot while campaigning in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is something that is directed at both parties, unfortunately. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, Republican.
And this is what I always say. It doesn't matter if you are a liberal Democrat or you're a conservative Republican. It doesn't matter. What matters is you are American. You are on American soil. You believe in the American dream. That's what matters. We are American. We should not be targeting each other. It's not fair. It's not even heard of. It is just stupid for us to fight one another. It's okay if Russia, China, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, it doesn't matter. All those countries want to end the United States. It's fair. Okay, that's fair. Okay, I get it. But when we are in America and Americans are fighting each other, are killing each other, what in the world are we doing? What are we doing? If we come together, there's nothing we cannot do. All right? So when I see people in the chat saying, well, you're a sellout, you're this, you're that, okay, I get it. But you're talking down to your fellow brother. What are you going to gain from that? Now they're protesting no king's protest in Atlanta, in Cobb County, everywhere in Georgia, around the nation, actually. Los Angeles, California, Texas, Chicago. It's like, okay, what do you guys actually want? You don't want ICE to do their jobs? Or you want Donald Trump to resign and say, you know what? I don't want to be the president anymore. What do y'all want, actually? Because nobody knows what y'all want. You impeached this guy twice in his first term. Now you want him to be impeached again? What y'all want, actually, man? All right, Brett.
We got to bring in our chief political anchor, Brett Baer, to get his reaction. Brett, I wish you were here with us because I just feel so much energy.
Well, listen, you guys are doing a great job out there. I'm up in the D.C. Bureau, and I just had to stick my head out the window and look at those fireworks. If you have never seen a fireworks display in Washington, D.C., there's nothing like it. I know you guys feel it on the ground, and to see it, and with the backdrop of the monuments, there's nothing like it. This show was pretty amazing, if you think about it, how it interwove all of these videos about real-life soldiers telling their stories about the Army Rangers, about West Point, about different elements of the U.S. Army. This was designed essentially as one big recruiting video and package. And they couldn't spend this kind of money to get this kind of attention. Remember, they spend about $2 billion a year trying to get this. Whatever this price tag is going to be, it's, to your point, Lawrence, going to be worth it. 250 years, the U.S. Army has fought, bled, and died for America. And this is what this day was about. Everybody talks about, and the critics said this was about President Trump's birthday, only mentioned a few times. I think some of the soldiers sang happy birthday. But this was about the U.S. Army's birthday. And you come away from this night, I think, with a look at the history of the U.S. Army, a patriotic look at the country. I will say, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, as I watched those fireworks, this is a dangerous time around the world.
That's right.
And in the Middle East, there are real fireworks and real missiles and an Iron Dome that is trying to protect Israel. And it's happening even as we speak right now.
That's right.
Tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern, I'll have an exclusive interview with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his first time to sit down since Israel started those attacks in Iran and has been defending from those missile attacks. And you'll see that live on Fox at 12 noon. And it's a dangerous time. The president has said he wants to protect America with peace through strength, build up the military. But there's a lot of people in our country that are worried as they look overseas that we may be drawn into something overseas. So that's also a backdrop of this night. Right. But to your point, Lawrence and Emily, it was a night of patriotism for America.
We were remarking as well, Brett, that the skies, the fireworks over us here in the skies, that yes, there's a juxtaposition between the celebration and the honor we feel now and those above Tel Aviv that send a whole different message. And to your point, I think that the symbolism and the messaging tonight as well is not just support for our United States Army, but also for our allies in that. And that peace through strength means, unlike prior administrations, we do not abandon our allies, and not to the tune of forever wars, but to the tune of smart investment and strong allyship with clear messaging and clear deterrence, so that forever wars and so that catastrophic losses that continue, that it ends, that it has ended. This is a new chapter, Brett.
Yeah, and there's a lot of questions I have for the Prime Minister, and we'll talk about that for a long time on that show tomorrow, about what this looks like, where does it end, where does it go, and what's the U.S. involvement that he wishes to see. There's a lot of questions there overseas. Tonight, I can tell you that this was really about the soldier, the men and women in the U.S. Army, and I got a lot of messages, as you all did, about the pride that they saw in the 250 remembrance. experience. You know, I told you that I covered the Pentagon for 6+ years, and I traveled overseas a lot. I was embedded with Special Forces a little bit in Afghanistan, and I remember, and just to this point, being embedded and coming to a special a forward operating base and filing my story for Fox on the computer, and next to me was this captain who was meeting his child over the earliest days of Skype over the computer. He was meeting the baby over the computer, and you know, the mom is crying, the baby's crying. I'm crying next door as I'm filing this story, and I just came away with all those experiences, saying the service and sacrifice of every member of the U.S. military needs to be remembered, and sometimes we forget that. So today was a lot about remembering that when it comes to the U.S. Army and all that they do and all that their families do to keep us safe.
You know, first of all, I want to say thank you to the Army. Thank you to the military personnel, the veterans. God bless you. Thank you for protecting the homeland. Thank you for your service. Now, with that being said, people forget that Trump has always been a billionaire. He's been a billionaire since the 70s, the 80s. This man has had his own plane for decades. Okay, this man has been rich forever. He's always had high-rise buildings across the world. He's been known to be a great businessman around the world. You can say what you want to say. He's had bankruptcies or whatever. I get it. But there is no successful human being on earth that has never failed. Elon Musk, that everybody is saying he's a great businessman, he's blown how many rockets? Michael Jordan, that everybody says this guy is the greatest basketballer ever. You know how many free throws he's missed? There's no great man that hasn't failed. But the idea that y'all saying that he's using all of this money to celebrate his birthday, he doesn't need this money, y'all. Like, what are y'all talking about? This man has been rich forever. Oprah Winfrey, all of these black rappers, everybody was celebrating Trump in the 80s and 90s. But as soon as he said he wanted to be a Republican, of course he's the bad actor. Of course he's the bad actor. They all took his money. He donated to the Democrat Party for years and years and years. Nobody had nothing to say about Trump. But of course, he comes out and say, I am going to run for presidency, and I am a Republican. All of a sudden, he's racist. He's this, he's that. I get it, okay? Somebody has to be the enemy. I get it. Somebody has to be the bad guy. Because then if there's no bad guy, nobody has anything to say. Okay, we need a bad guy. But I'm so glad that Trump has embraced the fact that it's okay to be the bad guy. And sometimes that's what we need in this world. You need to do what is necessary. It's just like today, we are celebrating Father's Day, okay? Fathers do the hard work. Sometimes your kid is misbehaving and the mother says, it's okay, let him be or let her be. But fathers know you got to stand up for what's right immediately. Doesn't matter what people say. As a father, you have to stand up for your child. You cannot spoil your daughter or your son, rather. So sometimes you got to be the bad guy, and it's okay. Okay, it's okay. And I support Trump. I voted for Trump. I think he's the greatest guy for the job. Just imagine right now if Kamala Harris was the president of the United States. Man, just imagine if Tampon Tim was the vice president of the United States right now. There's no telling how wide open the border would be.
You know, Brett, I asked you this question because you have been in the business so long and you've seen the ups and downs as a country and the politics going back and forth. But am I too naive? Could this be a reset for the country if we allow it to be a reset? I don't think I saw John Fetterman's tweet applauding this parade today and what it meant for the country, not for a political party or anything like that, but if we just take hold to this message of unity, the red, white, and blue, I think we can reset the politics here. Maybe they won't. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm too precocious as this young man on Fox News. But I feel hopeful tonight, Brett.
I think there's a lot of hope, and a lot of, the messaging out of tonight was that. But whether people hear it around the country completely, we noted that these No King protests happening in many cities around the country, suggesting that this was an authoritarian display. We don't have a king in the U.S., and in part we don't because the U.S. Army 250 years ago
That's right.
made it so. So there is no king here. And so whether this message and this messaging from today and tonight goes, as you say, Lawrence, and whether it really spreads along that line, we'll see. I do think it sets the table, however, for 2026 and the 250th anniversary of our country. The Declaration of Independence and all of the events that will lead up to that. This gives you a taste of a lot of the events that we're going to see, and maybe that will break through over time. We'll have to see.
And Brett, as we saw 250 years go by decade, and the uniforms of each of the regiments and learning their names that often had to do with battles from World War I or II or the Spanish-American War, that undying glory, as the president said earlier, was reflected in each regiment. And we've talked about as well sort of the failing elements of the school system here in this country. So this was an education in and of itself. And my point is that for the recruitment elements, the U.S. Army represents an incredible opportunity, limitless opportunities for young men and women watching here today. It's not just about the strikers and the Chinooks, although those are very exciting, but it's about the opportunity for young men and women who are seeing the Army and potentially joining the 1.2 million current U.S. Army reservists and active duty.
Yeah, we talked about this, that they're meeting and exceeding their recruitment goals, and they met them 4 months early. As you look at some of those helicopters flying over earlier today, and this was a big event for that. I think what you saw today was a look back and then a look forward, and you saw the robots, the dogs walking on the parade route. You saw the drones flying. That is the future of warfare. I mean, there you go, the robot dog, which is a little freaky if you think about it, but but it is going to be the future of autonomous vehicles and controlled from afar. And our Army and our Navy and our Air Force is going to look a lot different in coming years as all of this technology we tap into, artificial intelligence and other things. That said, there's still going to be men and women who are going to be fighters and controlling that, and they're going to be the future. So that's a big part of it today. I really do believe is about the recruitment element of it. And that was the instruction that these America 250 guys told me the president gave them.
You think about it, recruitment was so low under the previous administration. Now it's high. It's up because everybody believes that this guy is capable of keeping America out of situations that isn't necessary. And that's why he was voted in. Of course, like I always say, peace is very, very hard when it comes to politics. And peace is very expensive when it comes to politics as well. But I believe if there is one man that can actually negotiate peace, it might take a while. It is President Donald J. Trump. Okay, Netanyahu. And I gotta say this also. This man doesn't even take his salary. Of course, nobody's going to talk about it. CNN isn't going to tell you, hey, viewers, the president of the United States does not take his salary. He doesn't take his salary. He didn't take his salary during his first term as well. But now they're saying he's taking planes from Saudi Arabia. This man has had his plane forever. You think he needs a plane? This man has a plane. He's had multiple planes. Okay? Like, what do y'all talk about when you talk? You don't even listen to yourself. The problem is they know Trump cannot be bought. And that's the problem. So they come on TV and say, he's for sale. He's for sale. Okay, if he was for sale, why would Elon Musk say the things that he said about him? If Trump was for sale, wouldn't you realize that he would be pandering to Elon Musk? Rather, he's taking away the $7,500 tax credit for EVs. If he was for rich folks, he wouldn't do anything about it. He would just let it slide. But he's literally taking away the chips for Elon Musk's businesses. That tells you this man cannot be bought. But of course, you know, the media, when they come on TV, they tell you the opposite. So you guys' brain can be fried. But no, forget about fried brains, okay? We are wide awake and we know what's going on, all right? Here we go. Netanyahu and Brett Baer.
Joins us now from the outskirts of Tel Aviv. Alex?
Hi, good morning. I'm in Bat Yam, which is a suburb of Tel Aviv, where there has been widespread damage after Iran's overnight attack. So you can see the tall building behind me. That one took a direct hit from one of Iran's missiles. But that's not it. All of the surrounding homes in this area, the glass of the windows, the doors, the roofs have all been ripped off because of those shockwaves. Right now, rescue teams and police officers are searching through the area, combing through the rubble and going door to door, trying to find residents who are missing. This as all of these homes for the blocks to come will need to either be inspected, which could take years, or they are uninhabitable. And residents tell me that they will be moved to a school for now for temporary shelter. 10 people are dead in Israel and more than 200 are wounded after Iran launched dozens of new missiles overnight. There are more questions here on the ground of how some of these missiles were able to get past Israel's defensive capabilities and make direct impact on homes, something that we had not seen in the recent two conflicts with Iran. And today, Israel is increasing efforts to hit Iran's energy industry and defensive ministry headquarters. In a rare move, the IDF today in Farsi is calling on all residents living near reactors in Iran to evacuate. President Donald Trump says that the U.S. had nothing to do with Israel's strikes last night, but he warned, quote, if we are attacked in any way, shape or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. Now, back here live in Bat Yam, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is currently here. He's visiting this site. Brett Baer will conduct an interview with him, which will air at noon, 12 p.m. Eastern time later today. You can catch that on Fox News. And as far as the residents who live here, we are seeing people come out of their homes carrying bags of belongings because, again, they will no longer be able to stay here. Some of them tell me when the blast took place, they thought that it hit their home. That's how loud it was. That's how much the walls were shaking, how much the ceiling was crumbling. So a devastating morning for those who are permanently displaced, but those I've talked with say they are simply lucky to be alive. Back to you.
So, Alex, we're just hearing right now from the IDF spokesperson that Israel has struck Iran. Your reaction?
Exactly. They're continuing to carry out these targeted strikes, saying that they're targeting Iran's military infrastructure and now some of the energy industries. There's also that warning, which is quite a preemptive warning, to speak to people in Farsi, telling them if you live near any reactor in Iran that you should leave, giving a potential indication of what the next target might be. Another thing that we're watching is the coordinated effort that we saw last night between Iran and one of its proxies, the Houthis in Yemen, launching drones last night. Israel says it continues to try to intercept some of the drones that are attempting to breach its airspace. So far, we've seen quite a response from Israel's air defensive capabilities to be able to shoot down all of those drones. But it's a situation like this, the widespread damage that we're seeing, that's raising questions of how these missiles were able to get through and specifically hit residential buildings, something that residents largely had felt that they would be protected protected of.
So just to be clear, Alex, where you are right now and where those missile strikes have hit, Iranian missile strikes have hit right there are no military installations. There is no strategic. There's nothing strategic there. That's purely residential.
No, there's nothing strategic here. This is a residential neighborhood. These are all apartment buildings, no individual homes. There's no nearby military headquarters or police station for that matter. So you could argue that these are all missiles that are being sent blindly with no targets. Israel is saying that these are directed specifically at civilians. We'll have to wait and see if there's a further response. But this is exactly what we saw a couple days ago as well, that residential buildings are getting hit in Israel. And what is shocking for Israelis on the ground is while they might have been used to going to shelters for rockets that have been sent by Hamas or Hezbollah from Lebanon before the ceasefire, they would go to the shelter and they would wait it out. But they were not expecting to see this kind of damage. And I know you can see these two buildings behind me and probably some on this side. But to give you more of an example, I mean, you could walk for blocks and blocks here, and every single window on every single building has been completely shattered. I'm standing in grass where there's pieces of the building. There's glass on the ground, and in none of these homes will be able to be habitable for the foreseeable future.
Alex, I read last night that the response from Iran has been dozens, upwards towards 100, but not hundreds of missiles at a time. They believe that Iran has thousands. Seeing that that's how many were fired, yet that many got through in the area you're in, is there a sense that the Iron Dome isn't as effective in some areas, or that Iran is targeting places that may not be as well protected? Or, are the people on the ground, you said they're beginning to worry, but is there any kind of narrative about how effective the Iron Dome could be? Israel did say that this response is less than what they expected.
Well, it's a great question, and that's exactly the question that a lot of residents are asking here and are demanding to know from the IDF and from the government. How was this possible? How was the airspace able to be breached? And it is also something that we want to explain to our viewers. So the air defense capabilities do not intercept everything that breaches its airspace. The first night of the attacks, 25% of those missiles were not intercepted. And this is a planned response. Israel won't always intercept these missiles because it can detect where they might land. If it's not going to land on an area that potentially could kill people, then they don't believe that it's worth intercepting that missile. They'll simply let it fall. Yeah. This was an example of how wrong that situation could have gone, for it to be able to fall on a residential building, an apartment building, and destroy this entire corner of the neighborhood. So I'm sure this is exactly the question that you mentioned, that all of these residents are going to be asking themselves. How is this possible? How did this happen to me? Where do I go from here? Where do I live now? But again, they're telling me they're just thankful to be alive.
All right. Well, Alex.
First of all, I got to say this. I do not condone violence or war or all of this nonsense. In my opinion, Iran really has a history of these types of attitude. Israel has their own issues as well. I'm not saying Israel is, an angel, but for once in our life in this world, can we just live in peace? Can we all live in peace? Can we try that for like a year where there's no bombs and missiles going helter skelter? Can we just try? Please, y'all. But for some reason, these guys cannot. Okay? They can't. It's just impossible. All right? And I pray and I hope that Trump is able to stop this BS as fast as possible. Of course, they're saying that Iran is almost going nuclear. So that's going to be definitely a no-no, because if they do have nuclear weapons, Israel is definitely about to go extinct. That's for sure. So no nuclear weapons, Iran. Of course, Iran has oil, definitely oil. And I know America and Israel, and it's not just America and Israel. A lot of people have been trying to take, do business with Iran to some extent with their oil, and maybe they don't want to do business with this part of the world. I don't know. Who knows? But this isn't the right way. People are dying, and that's sad to see. But let's keep going, y'all.
Let's get to our top story. The IDF confirms new strikes in Tehran this morning.
As Israeli crews are searching for survivors in the rubble after deadly Iranian missiles killed 10 people and injure hundreds others.
Alex Hogan is live on the ground near Tel Aviv with the very latest. Alex, good morning.
Good morning. We're getting some breaking news right now. An alert has gone out to the entire country here in Israel, telling people they need to get close to a shelter. If sirens do go off, we're going to move into one of these buildings and take shelter, as there is the belief that there is likely an incoming attack. This is after we have seen widespread devastation in this neighborhood. This is Bat Yam in the outskirts of Tel Aviv, where one building behind me, a residential building, a large apartment building, was the scene of a direct hit. But as a result, all of the surrounding homes, all of the surrounding residential and apartment buildings have been completely destroyed, with the windows broken, the doors mangled, the roofs either partially or fully blown off as a result of this direct hit. This was the scene overnight of some of these impacts that we saw of Iranian missiles, some of which were able to breach Israel's air defense systems and create direct hits like this. We are now also learning of the increased number of dead. As many as 11 people have died in overnight strikes. That's because I'll show you this footage here, some of the drone footage of the area of where I'm standing. Search and rescue teams have been going through the area, combing through the rubble, and have just uncovered another body, another grim part of the news of the dead that we have learned of in recent days. Children are among the dead here in Israel. And we talked with the international spokesperson of the police, who says they had to use drones, canines, to comb through this area and search for survivors. Take a listen. What happens next? What happens tonight? Are you preparing to see, unfortunately, attacks and scenes just like this tomorrow morning again?
Well, I can't see the future, but I can tell you that the Israel police is prepared in the event that another barrage of rockets targets our civilian communities. Like I told you, we're on high alert, but we've also recruited 7 battalions, reserve battalions of our border police to help reinforce our units that are on the ground so that we can be in all areas of Israel. And if there's a rocket strike, missile strike to a certain residential community, we can get there as fast as possible. Time is of the essence when it comes to these things. We want to get people medically evacuated as fast as possible, provide service to anybody that may be trapped, and that's what we're going to continue doing.
So we've seen a massive police presence here throughout the morning. Medics, again, going through this area door to door. We are seeing all of them right now evacuating this area, getting themselves to shelter, something we are going to do as well if those sirens do sound off here in Tel Aviv, meaning that the city would once again be under attack. And it would be something that we have not seen in recent days. Typically, these Iranian missile and drone strikes have been happening at night, but for those sirens to take place during the day, it shows just once again the changing experience that Israelis are living through amid this escalation here in the Middle East. Back to you.
Thank you, Alex. So obviously, what we're looking at behind you is evidence that the Iron Dome did not get all the missiles that were that were incoming for Israel. And it's not the only; those are not the only. That's not the only missile that sort of got past the Iron Dome. What is the and obviously you have Israel, you have the United States. But there are also other countries that are trying to intercept these missiles. They have a long way to go from Iran. It's about 1,000 miles. They're going over Jordan. They're going over Saudi Arabia. And we know that those 2 countries are trying to help shoot down some of these missiles. What other efforts are there? What other countries in the region are working to help shoot down some of these missiles that are incoming to Israel?
Oh, we're getting some sirens right now. We're going to move ourselves to shelter. We're going to follow you, but you can stay with us as we continue to move.
Oh my
so to
goodness.
answer your question, the air defense systems here in Israel, it's not made up just of the Iron Dome. We also have a David Sling as well as the Arrow, all of which have different capabilities. Careful here as we move down on these stairs. So we're going to move with everyone into the shelter, into the closest shelter that we can find. as a result, these sirens mean that Tel Aviv is one of the cities that the IDF believes could be the center of this next incoming attack. So we have seen a U.S. presence continue to defend Israel as well. We know that the Army and the Navy, they have been using their resources to strike down some of these missiles and these drones that we've seen in recent days. As you mentioned, Jordan the other day, Jordan was able to intercept some of the drones that breached its airspace. But so far, in terms of the international response, really we're seeing Israel defend its skies as well as the U.S. trying to step in. So right now we're walking into this underground bunker. This appears to be a parking garage, one of the types of areas that would work well because it's insulated with concrete. This is the kind of area, again, similar to a stairwell or a bomb shelter, is the kind of place that people will need to stay until we get the all clear.
Alex, I'm not sure if you can still hear us very well, but just so we understand, that siren going off, does that mean something is imminent, that something has been spotted in the air?
I lost you there for a second. I think I have you back. If you could just repeat that question for me.
That alarm going off, does that mean that something is imminently incoming, that there's an active attack?
Yes, the initial warning that we got indicated, it went off to the entire country. It indicated that there could be an incoming attack that could interfere with the Israeli air defenses. Sorry, I'm getting some interference in my ear. The first alert that we got notified everyone across the country to get close to a shelter, and if the sirens did go off in their city, that would mean that their city potentially could be under attack. So the fact that we just heard those sirens and the fact that we're seeing even soldiers come here to take shelter means that all of Israelis, all of the foreigners, all of the tourists that are in Tel Aviv right now need to be taking shelter. We're also getting a new alert on our phones. All of the cell phones that people might have been going off, so you can take a look at that. Just alerting people, take a shelter. Obviously, this is in Hebrew, but alerting people to get to shelter as quickly as possible. And what we've seen in the past when we've been in this type of situation, we'll wait about 30 minutes to an hour before you get the all clear, so it can take a long time. But in my experience, when we've been here in bunkers like this, the explosions are so loud, it'll shake the walls. That's what we experienced overnight. So we're getting moved a little deeper into this bomb shelter. I might lose you. I'm not sure if it's working at this.
Man, this ain't right. But okay. Here we go. God is love,
now
y'all.
Ezekiel Leiter, who is the Israeli ambassador to the United States. Mr. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Shannon.
Can you give us a sense of a timeline, an end goal? How will you measure success? When will this mission wrap?
Well, I think we have a very good indication right now of how this needs to be wrapped up. As we talk, Shannon, there are missiles, ballistic missiles being fired from Iran into Israel. We're expecting a hit very soon. And this is very telling about what we're trying to contend with. The Iranians have a program, a very clear program, a written program to destroy us through nuclear weapons and through massive ballistic missile attacks. And we saw what one ballistic missile can do when it gets through the Iron Dome system, the defensive shield system. That's their intention, to kill as many people as possible. And this is what our Prime Minister has been saying for 15 years now. This is what the President of the United States has said repeatedly over the past 3-4 months. They cannot achieve a nuclear weapon, because if they do achieve a path to a nuclear weapon, they're going to use it.
So, of course, the U.S. was in some form of talks. Going into, we had hoped, a sixth round with Iran regarding their nuclear program. Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat, has said he feels like what Israel has done actually upended that process. I want to read you a little bit of his statement. He said, Israel's attack on Iran, clearly intended to scuttle the Trump administration's negotiations with Iran, risks a regional war that will likely be catastrophic for America, and is further evidence of how little respect world leaders, including our own allies, have for President Trump. How do you respond to the accusations that Israel has made the situation worse by upending those talks?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that Senator Murphy is now coming to the defense of the Trump administration. bit of an oddity, I would say. But Senator Murphy, has voted in favor of an arms embargo in Israel while we were at a war for our life. So I wouldn't be too concerned about his statement about Iran. We were in favor of negotiations throughout. We hoped that Steve Witkoff, the president's envoy, negotiating with Iran would be successful. The point is that they need to have their nuclear weapons program dismantled. That's our end game. And if it can be done through negotiations, if it can be done through talks and agreements, that's great. But as we said from the outset, the chance that the mullahs of Iran, this is a lunatic occult, a death cult that favors mass murder, talks every day about destroying our state, are not going to agree in the course of negotiations, and this is going to have to be done militarily. And our sons and daughters are flying those planes now to ensure that the state of Israel survives. Look, the important thing here to understand is that the Jewish people experienced 80 years ago a little guy with a mustache running around Europe saying he was going to annihilate us. And nobody listened, and nobody raised a finger, and we lost one-third of our people, 6 million, and we entered into a second world war that took the lives of 65 million people.
That's true.
If we
right
let
there.
these mullahs run loose with ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons, that's going to happen again. So what we're doing is preventing war, not advancing war.
Well, Ambassador, let me ask you about this, because you've talked about the Fort Isle site. That needs to be gone. It is deep underground. Axios notes this. Israel lacks the huge bunker busters needed to destroy this facility and the strategic bombers to carry them. The U.S. has both within flying distance of Iran. Any indication to you that the U.S. would be willing to offer those particular weapons and the planes to carry them that you need?
Look, that's a decision that the United States government has to take. We are going to deal with the nuclear program as best we can. We still have a few surprises up our sleeve. I think we've proven that over the past couple of days. We're determined to get this done. At this point, what we've requested from our ally, our greatest ally, the United States, is a defensive posture. They're helping protect our civilians through defensive missile systems. And that's our ask at this point. Whether or not they join in the battle to ensure a total dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program is a decision the administration will have to take.
Ambassador, we appreciate your time very much, sir. Thank you for making that for us this morning.
Once again, hopefully peace would reign. And I got to mention this, okay, because Jet just put in the comment section, he said, Trump warned Iran. Of course, everybody knows Iran is a police state. Now they've cut off internet in Iran. Okay, people cannot even use internet in Iran. Now, with that being said, he warned Iran. He said, make a peace deal. All right, you cannot have nuclear weapons. He said it multiple times, and he gave them 60 days ultimatum. But guess what they did? They didn't answer him. They said they're never going to stop. They're going to keep advancing. And now this is here happening. And he's still saying that there's still space and chance for a peace deal. So is what is happening now good? Absolutely not. But they were given a chance to avert this right here. But they didn't take the chance. So, of course, Trump always says peace through strength. He always says peace through strength. So if you F around and find out, you're going to definitely find out. Okay, you definitely will find out. But the fact is, he always gives everybody a chance to make peace. He always. And then they say no, and then they become shredded. There we go. Netanyahu and Brett Baer.
Now, in conversations with Israeli sources, they are drawing a stark contrast.
But first, this afternoon, a Fox News alert, the growing conflict in the Middle East, Israel launching a third day of airstrikes across Iran, Israeli officials advising Iranians to evacuate arms factories and threatening to use even greater force. Iran saying 128 people have been killed, 900 wounded so far. The Islamic Republic responding with missile attacks of its own, which have killed 13 people, wounding more than 360. Iran's foreign minister saying today his country will stop its attacks if Israel stops theirs. Let's get the latest now from Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst, live in Tel Aviv. Good afternoon, Trey.
Brett, good afternoon. Since the conflict began, Iran has launched more than 250 ballistic missiles into Israel. Overnight, 11 people were killed when some of those missiles slipped past air defense systems, slamming into residential areas. Hundreds more have been wounded. When we arrived at one impact site this morning, rescue crews were combing through the rubble of an apartment building in central Israel looking for survivors. One man in his 50s named Meir was still trapped as his son, who had been wounded in the attack, waited to learn the fate of his father. Right now, rescue workers are digging through the debris following that Iranian ballistic missile attack that targeted central Israel. They are looking for survivors who are trapped under the rubble, including Meir, that father. His son Ofek is off in the distance, still wearing his hospital gown after he was pulled from the blast site. He is hoping for a miracle today following this Iranian attack. Israel is responding to these recent attacks with more airstrikes targeting both military and energy positions inside Iran. Iranian media reports 128 people have been killed and 900 injured. We know among that list are Iranian nuclear scientists and top IRGC commanders targeted by Israel. Iran's foreign minister spoke today about the American support for Israel during the conflict. Now, in conversations with Israeli sources, they are drawing a stark contrast in what is happening here. The Israelis are going after military and nuclear sites. The Iranians are firing ballistic missiles toward Israeli civilians. Brett.
Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you. Joining us now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome back to Special Report.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Brett.
First of all, let me start at the beginning. Why did you launch this operation now?
Because we were facing an imminent threat, a dual existential threat. One, the threat of Iran rushing to weaponize their enriched uranium to make atomic bombs with a specific and declared intent to destroy us. Second, a rush to increase their ballistic missile arsenal into the capacity that they would have 3,600 weapons a year, new weapons within 3 years, 10,000 ballistic missiles, each one weighing a ton, coming in at Mach 6 right into our cities, as you saw today. And then in 6 years, 20,000. That's no country can sustain that, and certainly not a country the size of Israel. So we had to act. It was the 12th hour. We did act to save ourselves, but also, I think, to not only protect ourselves, but protect the world from this incendiary regime. We can't have the world's most dangerous regime have the world's most dangerous weapons. We're protecting ourselves, but by doing so, we're protecting many others.
You know, I just want to press you on the intel on the nuclear part. Less than 2 months ago, the new director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified on Capitol Hill, saying that everything had been suspended since 2003 and had not restarted, that the nuclear program had not been restarted by the Iranians. So did something change from end of March until this week? Was the U.S. intel wrong?
The intel we got and we shared with the United States was absolutely clear. Was absolutely clear that they were working in a secret plan to weaponize the uranium. They were marching very quickly. They would achieve a test device and possibly an initial device within months and certainly less than a year. That was the intel we shared with the United States. I think we have excellent intel in Iran. I think we've proven that. And that is something that we couldn't possibly accept. Whether it would be 6 months or 12 months or 13 months is immaterial. Once they go that route, it's too late. Mm-hmm. And we will not have a second Holocaust, a nuclear Holocaust. We already had one in the previous century. The Jewish state is not going to have the Holocaust meted on the Jewish people. It's not going to happen. Never again is now, and we had to act now.
What is the goal of these strikes? You talked early in one of your speeches after the attacks began with a message directly to the Iranian people. Clearly, some of these strikes have targeted Iranian leadership, military, nuclear scientists, and other leaders. So is regime change part of the effort here?
Could certainly be the result because the Iran regime is very weak. I think it's basically left with two things. It's plans to have atomic bombs and ballistic missiles. That's basically what Iran has. They certainly don't have the people. 80% of the people will throw these theological thugs out. I mean, they murder them. They oppress them for 46 years. They've yearned for freedom. I mean, they shoot women because their hair is uncovered. They shoot students. They just suck the oxygen from this brave and gifted people, the Iranian people. And the Persian people and the Jewish people have had an ancient friendship. Goes back to the times of Cyrus the Great. It could happen again. But again, the decision to act, to rise up at this time is the decision of the Iranian people. We decided to act because we saw enough uranium, enriched uranium, for 9 bombs. And all they had to do was weaponize them. We stopped that by we're attacking their nuclear sites. We attacked their chief nuclear scientists working. It's like Hitler's nuclear scientists. Would you leave them? Of course not. We attacked their top command. I can inform you, Brett, that moments ago, we also got the chief intelligence officer and his deputy in Tehran because we're now over the skies of Tehran. Our pilots, our brave pilots, are over the skies of Tehran, and we're targeting military sites, nuclear sites. That's what we're doing to take out those 2 threats. Unlike the Iranians, who your reporter said correctly, they're targeting our civilians.
Yeah.
They're bombing our civilians. So that's the difference. They're a terrorist regime. We can't have Iran have nuclear weapons. And by the way, our intel shows that they intend to give these nuclear weapons to their Houthi proxies and others. And that's nuclear terrorism on a global scale. It threatens everyone. And the last thing is they have plans to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles. Right now, 8,000 kilometers, very soon, just out a little distance, and they can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States. These people who chant death to America, try to assassinate President Trump twice, killed 241 of your Marines in Beirut, killed and injured thousands of American soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq, try to bomb a restaurant in Washington, D.C., chant death to America, burn the American flag. Do you want these people to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to your cities? Of course not.
Yeah.
So we're defending ourselves, but we're also defending the world.
I want to talk about the nuclear threat. I want to talk about President Trump. You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number 1. He's a decisive leader. He never took the path that others took to try to bargain with him in a way that is weak, giving them basically a pathway to enrich uranium, which means a pathway to the bomb, padding it with billions and billions of dollars. He took up this fake agreement and basically tore it up. He killed Qasem Soleimani. He made it very clear, including now, you cannot have a nuclear weapon, which means you cannot enrich. He's been very forceful. So for them, he's enemy number 1.
Yeah.
Look, they also tried to kill me, but I'm his junior partner.
When did
they
you
understand that President Trump is a great threat to Iran's plans to weaponize nuclear weapons and use them?
When did you tell President Trump you were going to launch these strikes?
Look, I've been in constant contact with President Trump. We've known each other for many years. And obviously, we informed our American friends and President Trump, our great friend, ahead of time. We did. He knew about it, of course.
I mean, there were reports that President Trump kind of helped you achieve your strategic surprise by publicly urging you not to attack when he already knew you had decided to do it. So you were closely coordinating with the U.S. throughout this process.
Look, we're fully coordinated, but understand that America, under President Trump, will make the decisions that are best for America. And that's the way it is. He understands that I, as the Prime Minister of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, must make the decisions that are important for the survival of my country, and he will do what is best for America. That is a relationship of mutual respect and mutual confidence.
Does Israel have the capacity to strike Iran's nuclear sites deep underground?
Well, we've certainly done quite a bit. We've destroyed the main facility in Natanz. That's the main enrichment facility. And if we need to, we'll add whatever is needed. But yes, we're committed to achieving both goals. And I'm not going to get into all of our objectives. I don't want to get into specific operational plans. But it's our existence, but not only ours. I think it's a wider battle here of civilization against barbarism, of good against bad. I mean, this regime, look at what it's done without nuclear weapons. It's just fomented evil everywhere. I mean, they've pushed international terrorism to the hilt into every part of the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, Lebanon, where they had Hezbollah, Hamas, where they encouraged the Houthis, the great massacre of October 7th, the Houthis. That's what they're doing when they don't have nuclear weapons, including attacking American targets. Now imagine what they'll do if they had nuclear weapons. And I'm always amazed at people who say they care about America and they don't want a war. They're right. This is a forever war that Iran is doing without nuclear weapons. And imagine what they will do if they have them. I think for the security of Israel, America, the world, we must make sure that they don't have these weapons and the means to deliver them. And they're working on both.
Well, I just want to ask you about the nuclear sites. Fordo nuclear enrichment facility located deep inside a mountain. These are from Iranian nuclear experts. Inside this mountain near Qom, Esfahan, deeply buried facility where Iran stores its highly enriched uranium. In some ways, experts say it might even be more important than Fordo. The IAEA says it's a half-mile deep. So I guess the question is, if the goal is destroying Iran's nuclear program, how do you do so without the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs that really only the U.S. has? Have you asked President Trump to use that 30,000-pound penetrator bomb to get to those facilities?
I'm not going to get into my discussions with the president, but understand that his decisions are his decisions. As for these targets, we've destroyed in Isfahan the conversion facility they had. That's a very important facility that without which you can't really build a weapon. That's gone. There are other plans that we have. I won't get into it. I think Israel has shown that it has, well, how shall I say it? We're the innovation nation that we're called that, startup nation. So we have quite a few startups and quite a few rabbits up our sleeve. And I don't think that I should get into that.
Okay. Well, I mean, are you getting everything from the U.S. that you've asked for? Is there something that you've asked for that you're not getting?
What I'll say this is that I deeply appreciate President Trump's decision to help in the defense of Israel. American pilots are shooting down drones that are headed towards Israel, as do our pilots. American THAAD missile batteries are helping defend Tel Aviv and greater Tel Aviv area. American Aegis ships are in the Mediterranean. That's all a decision by President Trump, which I deeply appreciate. Again, his decisions on what to do at any given time is the president's decision. I trust his judgment completely.
Do you have any estimate on how much you have set back Iran's nuclear program?
I think we've set them back quite a bit. I think they were completely surprised. And, you know, surprise is a great element of success. Remember the Pagers? Remember Nasrallah? That's part of breaking up the Iranian axis. And we achieved that with surprise. And I think we achieved a great surprise the other day when we started. You know, we could wait and wait and wait. They'd string along the negotiations. We gave them a chance. I gave them a chance. But it was clear they were not serious about it. It became clear, I think, to the United States as well, because the president was very clear. He said, you can't have nuclear weapons. And in order not to have nuclear weapons, you can't enrich uranium. And they basically strung everybody along. And it was clear to us it was going nowhere. I could wait and wait and wait until they officially declared that the talks were off. Or they, you know, and we'd officially declare that we're going to attack them. That's not how I conduct wars, and it's not how Israel conducts wars. So we're, you know, we're geared to do whatever is necessary to achieve our dual aim, to remove two existential threats, the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat. And we're doing that as we speak now in Tehran, but we're not bombing the population. We're telling the population, leave. So when we hit the targets embedded in civilian areas, you won't be hurt. And there's now mass migration from Tehran right now. That's what's happening. So because we're giving them forewarning.
Mr. Prime Minister, what proportion of Iranian air defenses do you think you've taken out? Back in October, the air defenses were really decimated. Now you say you have kind of control of the skies as you're picking these targets, yet these missiles and drones are still coming your way as they attack, as you point out, civilian areas inside Israel.
Well, you're right. First of all, we're doing a lot to prevent a lot of them from coming in, but it's not hermetic. You're quite right. But when I say we have control of the skies, you correctly said that they had a very dense anti-aircraft batteries between the western border of Iran and Tehran, and basically our incredible, there's no other word to describe it, our incredible intel guys and the Mossad, they did wonderful work to peel off the layers of protection that they had, and our pilots took them out. And so we have a free highway to Tehran, and we can now pick off the targets that we need in Tehran and other places without having our planes shot down. And so far, none of them have been shot down. And I hope that continues. But we are absolutely resolute to remove this threat. This is what you have to do when you stand at the brink of catastrophe. And I think it's not just our test. You know, Churchill talked about the slumber of democracies. He said that democracies tend to sleep until the jarring gong of danger wakes them up. Well, sometimes it might not wake them up. Certainly, we didn't need a wake-up gong. I've been talking about the Iranian threat for 40 years. 3 years, I think, 4 years after the Iranian regime, the Ayatollah regime, hijacked Iran and the people of Iran. I said the greatest threat facing Israel and potentially the world is this regime that will try to arm itself with nuclear weapons. And I've devoted a considerable part of my life, in fact, most of my life, to preventing that. And when the gong of danger sounds, and you know it's the last moment, it's the 12th hour, you've got to act. That's what responsible leaders do. And what I seek is that the entire world will do what President Trump is doing. He's standing up for good against evil. He's standing up for the right against the wrong. He's standing up for good against bad. And I think that's very admirable. I salute you for it, President Trump.
The president's also, however, Mr. Prime Minister, calling for Iran to get back to the table, to the negotiating table. You don't seem to be saying that that's worth it. How does this end?
Well, in fact, I said it is worth it if they'll do what the president wants, and that is eliminate their enrichment capacity. You know, that's a lot better than my country, my forces, my brave pilots having to do it. It's much better than our Mossad operatives on the ground having to do it. But if they don't do it, and they certainly didn't want to do it, it became very clear, we had to act. We don't wait until we have a nuclear holocaust. That's not going to happen again.
So how does it end?
Well, it'll end when we remove those capacities, and we will.
You stop short of killing Iran's civilian leaders, just military commanders. I mentioned nuclear scientists, but not the supreme leader, Khamenei. There is a Reuters report just moving saying that President Trump in the last couple of days vetoed an Israeli plan to kill Iran's supreme leader, according to 2 U.S. officials. Is that true?
Actually, there's so many false reports of conversations that never happened, and I'm not going to get into that, but I can tell you, I think that we do what we need to do. We'll do what we need to do. And I think the United States knows what is good for the United States. And I'm just not going to get it.
Okay. The Iran foreign minister today told reporters this: if Israel stops attacks on Iran, quote, our responses will stop. The attack on Iran in the midst of nuclear talks clearly demonstrates the Israeli regime's opposition to any form of negotiation. Of the canceled talks that were intended to take place today, he said Iran would have presented a counterproposal that, quote, could have opened doors for an all-out agreement with the Americans. So, again, the foreign minister saying, if you stop, they will stop. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, it's hogwash. While they were negotiating, the Ayatollah himself, Khamenei, tweeted again and again, death to Israel. Israel must be destroyed. So some good faith there, right? Aside from that, they had bad faith because they were cheating, and we saw it in our intel. It was very clear. And the U.S. had that same intel. Believe me, we shared it. We share that intelligence. One of the great things of our unprecedented cooperation that has happened under President Trump is that we share every bit of information. So number one, he's lying. That's not new. Iran lies all the time. They cheat. But the second point is that they are they say, okay, we'll stop if you stop. Stop what? You'll continue to develop your engines of death, mass death, continue to develop your nuclear bombs, continue to develop the ballistic missiles like the one that fell in Tel Aviv, near Tel Aviv today. I was there, the whole building just slammed through. Children sleeping in their beds, killed. Women sleeping in their beds, killed. Horrible stuff. Yeah, they'll stop and continue to develop the means for our extermination. That's not going to happen. So obviously, that's not said in good faith. The issue here is not de-escalation. The issue here is not ceasefire. The issue here is stopping those things that will threaten our survival. And we're committed to stopping them. And I think we can achieve them. Now, if they are willing to accept President Trump's terms, that's a different matter. I said that months ago. And I said, and in my meeting with the president in Washington,
Yeah, overnight.
if you can get a deal that does it, fine. But he didn't, not because the president didn't want it. It's because Iran didn't want it, and they cheated.
Overnight, you expanded your airstrikes to include oil and energy infrastructure in Iran. Is that a different phase? What's the point?
Well, this was an oil container. It wasn't a production site, but it merely means that we're ready to take whatever action is needed. And of course, we'll take some of those actions in response to what Iran does to us. But as I said, our main targets are the military and nuclear targets, and we're taking them out with the precision and with purpose.
We're not hearing much harsh criticism from the Gulf Arab countries. There have been some statements. Saudi Arabia putting out, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its condemnation, strong denunciation of the Israeli attacks that targeted the Islamic Republic of Iran, which violated sovereignty. These attacks represent a blatant violation of international laws and norms. That was early on, but not much since then. How do you judge the Gulf states' response to what's happening now?
Well, I'll leave that to them. They can speak for themselves. But I truly believe, that we have a great future if we take out Iran. Iran has been the systematic fomenter of wars, sabotage, terrorism. They attacked Aramco, the Saudi oil facilities. They send terrorists everywhere throughout the Middle East. So I think that I have a different conception, a different future. And it was embarked on with the help of President Trump and his leadership in the Abraham Accords, where we signed peace treaties with 4 Arab states, expanding the peace, something that wasn't done for a quarter of a century. And I believe that we'll have opportunities to expand the peace as well with other of the Arab states next to us. I think they understand that Iran is a mortal threat to them as well. They have their eyes on their oil facilities. They want the waterways with the Houthis. They want to conquer the Middle East. And the one obstacle they've had so far is the state of Israel, because we're the ones fighting Iranians. And the other obstacle they have is President Trump. And I think, I'll tell you, they think that President Trump is an enormous obstacle. They think that Israel is a very big obstacle, and they're out to get us both. In fact, they tried to kill me too. They fired a missile into my bedroom window. They missed.
Wow. The Saudi Crown Prince, as you remember, in September of 23, told me he was getting closer every day to recognizing Israel and normalization. The very next day, you repeated that to me. Take a listen.
Reports that you had suspended talks.
No, that's not true.
Not true. So you think, if you were to characterize it, are you close?
Every day we get closer.
I know you heard those words from the Saudi Crown Prince. What was your response?
Well, I was delighted to hear what he had to say, and to borrow a phrase, I think we're getting closer to peace every day that passes.
Obviously, October 7th was just a few days later. Can you get back to that moment, pre-October 7th?
I think what you heard was correct. One of the possible reasons for the timing of Hamas's attack, and remember, Hamas is one of Iran's terror proxies. One of the reasons that they may have brought up the attack, and not even coordinated it with others as they were supposed to do, is perhaps that they were afraid that the words of the Saudi Crown Prince and my own words were about to materialize. But they will materialize one day, I'm sure of it. And that day will be a lot sooner once we get rid of this mortal threat that Iran poses not only to Israel, but to our Arab neighbors to Europe, to the United States, to many others.
Last thing, Mr. Prime Minister, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about the situation in Gaza. One of the reasons it's not moving forward, the normalization, is because of how that's happening. Understand that you put the onus on Hamas for everything that's happening there. But as of now, you know, we take the Gaza Health Ministry for what it is. They say the death is 55,000. The United Nations puts it at that number as well, but they're citing the Gaza Health Ministry and women and children making up half of the dead. Is there an Israeli estimate as far as the death in Gaza since the start of that operation?
Well, the ratio of civilian combatants to non-combatants is about 1-to-1, which is unheard of in such a dense urban environment. And that's happening because we're telling the population leave, and Hamas at gunpoint, and sometimes shooting them, saying stay in the war zone. That's why you have, or had, a lot of civilian casualties. That is decreased, and happily, because we're doing everything in our power to separate combatants from non-combatants. The reason this war has been going on for so long is, well, one primary reason is the hostages. They've taken hostages. Remember, this is the regime that took Americans hostage.
There's
That's how they began.
53 captives, less than half of them believed to be alive. Is that fair?
20 are alive. The rest, unfortunately, are not alive. But, you know, we started out with, we've already brought back 202 hostages, most of them alive. Some people believed in the beginning of the war, in fact, the most senior military people, they said, we'll be lucky if we got one. And I said, no, I don't think so. I think that a combination of military and diplomatic pressure will get us, we can get them out. And I'm committed to getting all of them out. I've said 2 days ago, I've instructed our people to try to resume the negotiations for a ceasefire that would enable us to take Steve Witkoff, the American envoy, has made an offer to begin a 60-day ceasefire in which half of those hostages would be released right away. And I said, yes, we're ready to go. There's been some development there. I hope we are able to do that because I'm committed to getting them out. And I'm committed to getting them out and also to separate the Hamas from controlling the humanitarian aid that we're trying to give the people of Gaza, because they rob it, they steal it, and then they take a good chunk for themselves, and then they hike up the prices and give a pittance to the civilian population. So we have a plan that we devised with the help of American firms to separate the giving of the humanitarian aid to the population from Hamas control. And we're accused of starvation policies and all these other demonizations and vilifications against Israel. Look, we're a democracy fighting an island in a sea of evil, and we're doing what we can to remove this proxy, this Iran terror proxy as well. But the big problem, the big question for Israel, for humanity, for the world, for Israel and the United States is whether we can take away the weapons of mass death from this cult of death that is in Tehran. The tyrants of Tehran will not win. We, with God's help, we will win.
So just address the critics who say about Gaza that you're trying to make Gaza unlivable in order to push Palestinians out of the territory permanently. When they say that, what's the response?
Yeah. Well, because it's another lie. These are incredible lies. I think, first of all, no army in the history of the world has gone to the lengths that Israel has gone to separate combatants from non-combatants using millions of text messages, phone calls, you name it, everything, leaflets even, getting the population out. Otherwise, we'd have an enormous number of civilian deaths. And of course, Israel has that firepower, but we don't use it because that's our moral base. But the other thing is equally that we're not trying to destroy Gaza. We're trying to remove the threat from Gaza. And as far as the choice of people, if they want to leave or not, President Trump has given a brilliant idea. He said, look, Gaza has to be rebuilt. It's been destroyed because every place is booby-trapped. So, you know, the population finally leaves. They overcome the threats by Hamas to shoot them, and they just leave. They tell Hamas, leave our buildings, and they almost get shot by Hamas. But when they leave, they booby-trap everything. So when we come to fight the terrorists, they set off these charges and they kill our soldiers. What we do is we bring a supercharge. It detonates all the booby traps, and that's how you have buildings destroyed. We also go into tunnels sometimes at great sacrifice. Our UN ambassador, Leiter, had his son, 39-year-old father of 7, killed because he went as a reserve soldier to defuse these tunnels. But we put charges there. They blow up the tunnels. The tunnels are below buildings. The buildings collapse. So there's a lot of demolition in Gaza. It has to be rebuilt. President Trump said, okay, let the people have a choice. Why are they locked in? They're not locked in other battle scenes, and people leave by the millions in Ukraine, in Iraq, and Syria. They're left by the millions. In Gaza, they're locked in. He said, why? Give them a choice. If they want to leave to other locations, help them with a voluntary relocation. If they want to come back, they'll come back after the work of basically restructuring Gaza is complete. And I think that's a brilliant plan. I think it's all for the good. It's good for peace. It's good for Israel and the United States. I think it's good for Palestinians. They should be given a choice.
Mr. Prime Minister, very last thing. I asked you how long this may last. You said it's up to the Iranians. If you had the opportunity, and you do now, to speak directly to the Supreme Leader and to speak directly to the Iranian people, what are those 2 messages you'll say?
Well, the Iranian dictator, really, he's a dictator. He's a tyrant. He has sent us a message calling just about every day for the death of Israel, the destruction of Israel and America, but the death of Israel. So my answer to him is with action, not with words. But to the people of Iran, I say you're great people. You're people of great talent and genius. You have been usurped by this tyranny that has robbed you of hope, has robbed you of a good life. I speak to the Iranian people directly. I don't know if you know this, Brett. I do these videos. I get millions and millions of responses. And they say, Viva Israel, bravo Israel, free us from this tyranny. And I say to them, your hour of freedom is near. Rise up, be free.
Mr. Prime Minister, we appreciate your time in the middle of a very dangerous time inside Israel. We should point out you are inside Israel. We've kept your location private since it's a security situation, but we appreciate all the time you've given us. You're welcome back on Special Report anytime.
Wow. BB, ladies and gentlemen, with Brett Baier. What do you guys think about that interview? I think that was pretty insightful. There are things that we probably didn't know about, but now we have. I am still advocating for peace. Iran, hopefully they can come to the table and have a conversation with Israel as well as the President of the United States. All right, here we go. More update.
And we begin this Sunday morning on day 3 of Israel's war with Iran and Iranian retaliation fired overnight. 10 Israeli civilians killed last night as Iran targeted neighborhoods. And Israel continues its massacre on military infrastructure in Iran and Iran's ability to make a nuclear bomb. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the operation to remove the Iranian threat to Israel will last, quote, as many days as it takes. Earlier, an Israeli official saying Israel had planned a 2-week operation to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities. The Israeli attack beginning before dawn on Friday, when Israel launched waves of strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities and its leadership, taking out the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard and 3 other major generals, along with 9+ scientists working on Iran's primary nuclear sites throughout the country. Israel saying 3 out of 4 of Iran's nuclear facilities have been diminished or destroyed, as Israel struck so far 250 targets and 720 components. A major nuclear facility still exists in Iran underground with enriched uranium. Iran is firing back and has picked up the retaliation overnight and the weekend. First, sending 200 missiles into Israel, killing 3 people on Saturday and then another 10 last night. The Israeli defense minister said yesterday Tehran will burn if it continues to fire missiles at Israel. Here's Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday.
We paved the way to Tehran, and our pilots over the skies of Tehran will deal blows to the Ayatollah regime that they cannot even imagine. And I can tell you this, we have indications that senior leaders in Iran are already packing their bags. They sense what's coming. I'll tell you what would have come if we hadn't acted. We had information that this unscrupulous regime was planning to give the nuclear weapons that they would develop to their terrorist proxies. That's nuclear terrorism on steroids. That would threaten the entire world.
President Trump has been warning Iran to make a deal on its nuclear ambitions and reiterating that Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb now for several months. Back on April 12th, the president gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. Israel attacked Iran on day 61, which was this past Friday. And as far back as March of this year, with President Trump in office for the second time just a month and a half, the president told me directly he sent a letter to the Ayatollah Khomeini trying to achieve a peaceful outcome.
The people of Iran are great people, but they had a tough regime, and they'd meet and they'd be shot in the streets. I mean, it was a tough deal. But I would rather negotiate a deal. I'm not sure that everybody agrees with me, but we can make a deal that would be just as good as if you won militarily. But the time is happening now. The time is coming up. Something's going to happen one way or the other. I hope that Iran, and I've written them a letter saying, I hope you're going to negotiate, because if we have to go in militarily, it's going to be a terrible thing for them.
Exactly. This is why I admire this guy, ladies and gentlemen. He gives you the chance to repent, okay? He says, you know what? Let's make a deal. Let us make a deal. And of course, people don't listen. And now, F around and find out.
You wrote a letter to the Khomeini,
Yes.
the leader? When did you send the letter?
Yesterday.
And you said you better negotiate, or we want you to
I didn't
negotiate?
say you better. I said,
Okay.
I hope you're going to negotiate, because it's going to be a lot better for Iran. And I think they want to get that letter. The other alternative is we have to do something, because you can't let them have a nuclear weapon.
That was on March 9th. Joining me now from an undisclosed location is the exiled Crown Prince of Iran, His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi. Your Highness, thank you so much for being here today. What is your reaction to this conflict?
The first thing I need to say here is that my heart goes out to the victims, civilian victims, both in Iran and in Israel, who are unfortunately casualties of this conflict. But one thing is very clear, and I mentioned that last time we spoke, that this is not the Iranian people's war. It is Ali Khamenei's war, and he's solely and ultimately responsible for having brought this to this stage. What angers me further is that he's using my compatriots as a human shield, while he is currently hiding in some underground tunnel like a rat. And we have had reports that senior members and officials have already had their families fleeing the country to foreign destinations, perhaps even including some of his own.
You heard Benjamin Netanyahu say that there are leaders that are packing their bags and leaving. Do you believe that this Iranian regime can be toppled?
Absolutely. It's just a matter of time. I believe that for 44 years. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. But now we have a tremendous opportunity. Last time we spoke, I mentioned that the regime is at its weakest. As of last 3 days, the regime is 10 times weaker than it was 2 weeks ago. So at this stage, I think the Iranian people obviously realize that the playing field has been more equalized for them, to give them finally an opportunity to rise and get rid of this regime. Because we always believe that the ultimate solution to the problem is for this regime to no longer be there. Not at the hand of foreign troops or countries, but at the hand of the Iranian people themselves. The Iranian people are the boots on the ground that we need. What they need, however, is solidarity from the free world to once and for all get rid of the problem, help Iranians overcome this regime, and put an end to all the threats that this regime has been the root cause of for decades now in the region and beyond.
Do you think the rest of the world, the free world, will heed that call and come to the aid of the Iranian people? What would you like to see?
What I like to see is for the world to know that the only way you can have less stress for the economic stability of the world, have less casualties of innocent victims here and there, have an end to all these threats, including the nuclear threat, is to eliminate this regime.
And ladies and gentlemen, This is coming from Prince Reza. This is coming from Prince Reza, ladies and gentlemen. This is a crown Iranian prince. And he's saying that he does not want Iran to want a nuclear weapon or to have a nuclear weapon. So when Americans are talking, I guess maybe we do not know more than the prince of Iran.
The sooner they come to this conclusion, the sooner we'll be rid of the problem and we can all breathe a sigh of relief. The Iranian people are willing to do their part. In fact, they've done this so many times with no help whatsoever, but they're willing to risk life and limb in order to finally overcome. Last night, people on the streets were angry, chanting death to the dictator yet again. They know who the enemy is. The regime has been giving them slogans of death to America and death to Israel for the past 4 decades. And Iranians have been responding, they lie to us when they say it's America. Our enemy is right here, meaning the regime. And fortunately, I see that more and more people, public opinion, media, and foreign governments are finally making a clear distinction between the people of Iran and the regime. And that's key. That tells you right there that the solution is in front of your eyes. The Iranian people are your solution, not negotiating with a regime that cannot be trusted. Case in point, the latest report of the IAEA. They are not to be trusted. And I've said that so many times already.
And you've said also that the Iranian leadership is at its weakest. How would you assess, based on your own knowledge of this, how would you assess the nuclear capabilities today?
Well, it certainly has been tremendously set back. But the whole point here is that how much more time do you want the regime to catch a second breath and come back online? How many times are we going to yet again throw them a lifeline? How many times are we going to allow them, as they were going down in their ability to spend money on their proxies or for repression machineries at home, to get access to more funding that they shouldn't have had? I think this is the perfect time. The G7 are meeting right now in Canada. Why not prescribe the IRGC, which is the element that has been the root cause of repression at home and terrorism abroad, as part of the kind of pressure that the world can bring? And at the same time have the parallel track, you and I have spoken about this many times already, a parallel process of maximum support. Some people have already been talking about internet interruptions in Iran that the regime has always tried to use as a tactic to make people have more difficulties communicating. Starlink and Elon Musk are trying to do their part. We need much more of that. This is how, in fact, they can help the Iranian people have a better chance to succeed, and their success will be in your own interest at the end of the day.
Your Highness, Iran is apparently reaching out to several countries right now, trying to get a message to Israel to stop and put in some kind of a ceasefire. According to Israeli officials, Iranian leaders are sending messages to Israel through Italy, Azerbaijan, Cyprus. They may be using Qatar and Oman to relay signals to the United States. What is your message to those countries?
I think, again, if the fundamental argument is that the source and the root cause of all the problems and all the threats is directly linked to the survivability or the continued survival of this regime this far, the quickest way to eliminate all these problems is to put an end to this regime. If out of desperation they're begging for yet again another life insurance, I think, they had plenty of opportunity to come clean. And they haven't. And the minute they get a chance, they will go back to their old tricks. They're only trying to buy time. This is a pattern that has been many, many times observed by this regime. Every time their back is to the wall, they try to come across as, okay, now we are willing to consider it. But the minute they get a chance, they go back to their old ways, which is why I'm saying it is not a reliable formula. You will always be in anxiety of how far can we rely on this, how far the negotiation could succeed if they were to resume. And at the end of the day, you still have the same problem in place, because let's say, for the sake of argument, and we talked about this before already, let's say there is a deal on the nuclear issue. What about terrorism? What about funding of the proxies? What about radicalization? What about all the other aspects that this regime has been involved with? What about their funding of radical groups in Europe and in the United States on university campuses, fomenting all this kind of anti-Semitic rhetoric and whatever we have seen. This is Ali Khamenei's regime yet again. The Iranian people, on the other hand, want to have cordial relationship with our neighbors, whether it's the Israelis or the Saudis or the rest of the Persian Gulf in our neighborhood, because unlike this regime that survive on warmongering and celebrate martyrdom, we want to celebrate peace and brotherhood and life. And that's the difference. Invest on the Iranian people. After 46 years of trying the other way around, give the Iranian people this time a chance to put an end to all the problems. A, to free themselves, which is my mission in life. To it, but we need the world to understand that which side of history will they be standing on this time.
Your Highness, you wanted to give the people a message in Farsi.
Thank you so much, Maria. همیهنان عزیز، فرصت غنیمت هست که در حال حاضر با عقب نشینی نظام و تضعیف خیلی بیشتر از هر زمانی یک فرصت استثنایی هست که بالاخره کار رو به دست خودتون بگیرید و نبرد نهایی رو پیگیری بکنید. هرچی بیشتر متحد باشید، هرچی بیشتر فعال باشید، هرچی بیشتر در خیابان‌ها باشید، مطمئن باشید که ریزش‌ها هم بیشتر به سمت شما انجام خواهد شد.
All right, there you have it from the Crown Prince Reza. He delivers a message to Iranian people in Farsi. Hopefully they get that. And more. Here we go. Happy Father's Day, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Father's Day.
Now is four-star general and head of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, thank you so much for being here. I thought that was pretty stunning that you heard from Roger Marshall that Iran was that close, a week away. How would you assess Rising Lion and this operation?
Yeah, well, certainly it's very impressive. You know, Israel continues to surprise us with the things that they can accomplish, but it's also pretty fundamentally a military operation pretty similar to how we would approach it. The first thing they did is took out and gained air superiority. They still had some air defense systems of their own, 4 different types from 50 kilometers to 300 kilometers in range. They're all gone. The Iranian fighters have never challenged Israeli fighters. They know it's no contest. They don't even make an attempt. So Israel can fly any place in Iran unimpeded. They have air superiority. They took down these leadership targets in a brilliant operation. You know, when they fired these missiles into these apartments, they did it all simultaneously because they didn't want any warning that people could bunker. And they were avoiding that. And so to be able to achieve that means that they're inside Iranian security services. Their covert operations have penetrated that, and we've known that for a number of years, given all the other covert operations that they've been so successful at. And then the center of gravity certainly is the nuclear enterprise itself and the ballistic missiles that are now raining on Israel. The nuclear enterprise, Maria, is a very complicated target. It would be a complicated target for the United States. It's spread out in excess of 12 sites. And to deal with every one of those sites is a campaign almost in itself. And the Natanz facility, the most prominent and the largest one, has been severely damaged. The Isfahan facility, another one, is in progress of being severely damaged. They're working extensively on it. They have significant amount of enriched uranium. Now, what the Iranians do, and they're smart about this because they knew at some point they're likely going to be attacked, they spread out their centrifuges at multiple sites, and they spread out their enriched uranium at multiple sites. So it's not, there's no easy target to go down and take 1 or 2 sites. They haven't hit the Iraq facility at all yet, and Fordow, which is deeply buried a half a mile into the ground, is clearly a major impediment and obstacle for the Israelis, given the depth of that target. So the majority of Iran's nuclear enterprise is still intact. That's the message. That means we're in the early stages of a campaign here. This is not a 1 or 2, 3 day limited attack. This is a campaign that we're watching unfold before our eyes. And the other target that Israel is reaching out to is energy targets. That means oil and gas, and they're hitting both of those now and likely to be expanded. So that's the target set that Israel has. They're not targeting the regime. They could literally take the civilian leadership down, I believe, if they wanted to. I think they have hands off of that, and they do not want to martyr that leadership and have all of those proxies consolidate once again to come after Israel, given the passion and fuel that would be energized by taking down the supreme leader and his cohorts. I think that's a good decision. I know other people would like to see that happen, but you got to think through the strategy and what the implications of that are.
This is incredible information that you're giving to us, General. Thank you. I want to get back to what you mentioned on the Fordow nuclear site, which is the nuclear facilities that are deep underground in Iran. What is the danger of attacking and trying to get at that nuclear site underground? The danger in terms of the environment, and what is the U.S.'s role? I know that you've spoken with President Trump this weekend. What should the U.S. be doing in terms of supporting Israel's attempts to get at that very significant nuclear site underground called Fordow?
Yeah, sure, certainly. Well, my conversations with the president are his conversations once I begin that, and I don't discuss those. But I think the U.S. role right now certainly is appropriate. We have provided intelligence. We've been providing logistics and munitions to the Israelis, ever since the conflict started back in October. And when President Trump came in, he removed the restrictions the Biden administration had put on munitions that Israel needed. And obviously, those munitions are being used in this operation. So thankfully, they have what they need to have. And if they need more, they'll get more. The United States is all in on that. And certainly, we're taking up a very defensive role to help deal with the ballistic missiles. The ballistic missiles is a complicated enterprise. That is the only system that they have that can now hurt Israel. These drones are irrelevant. It 8 hours to get there. Ballistic missiles, on average, 11 minutes. And ballistic missiles have, significant accuracy depending on the quality of that particular missile. In October, they fired 200 at the Israelis, and 40 penetrated. Not a lot of public recognition of that because the Israelis were very concerned. Those missiles fell in the desert near Air Force bases and the Mossad headquarters. One person killed, not much damage.
Okay.
This target is very, very complex in terms of what they're dealing with. I also think dealing with the Fordow facility, I believe if Israel is asking for penetration bombing, we should give them penetration bombing so they can complete the damage and destruction of this nuclear enterprise. We should not leave that site intact so the Iranians can recover and rebuild. That will be their objective, and we should take that off the board once and for all.
Understood. General, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for tuning into the live show. God bless you. I see C. Shelley in the chat. Thank you for wishing happy Father's Day. God bless you, C. Shelley. And with that being said, instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself, believe in your dreams, and believe in Almighty God. God is the greatest. Thank you to the military personnel. Thank you to the veterans. You guys protect the homeland. Shout out to the law enforcement officers, and shout out to the ICE, baby. Shout out to ICE agents. God bless you for your job. Border Patrol, God bless you. Thank you for what you do. Also, I got to say thank you to everybody in the chat right now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being here, spending time, and learning about what's going on around the world in America, precisely because America is the greatest country on earth. So, I got to say, shout out to our esteemed members. God bless you, Dr. Luke, the GOAT. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Sandra. God bless you. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Ringmaster. God bless you. And shout out to Jet. God bless you, Jet. God bless you. Zara's Garden. Thank you. Michael. God bless you. Anyway, with that being said, happy Father's Day one more time to the strong, brave fathers out there. And as I always say, Fathers, take care of your kids. Say that one more time. I'll say that one more time, man. Fathers, take care of your kids. And with that being said, it is your boy Genesis. I truly believe America is the greatest country on the face of the earth. It is your boy Genesis, and I am signing out.